like I said in video number 1, we're kind of skipping around chapter 6. So now we are working through section 5, even though it's actually our second piece of notes. Because there are a lot of parts of chapter 6 that the state doesn't actually think you need to know, and they're confusing and weird and hard. And so if the state doesn't think you need to know it, then let's not hurt our brains. So, make sure you write down the essential question. So, altitude of a triangle is just a fancy name, okay, for the perpendicular segment, that goes from the vertex perpendicularly to the other side, to the opposite side, okay? Remember, perpendicular gives us a right angle, okay? So the altitude is, and I'm saying this like this because we're learning a couple different pieces of vocabulary here today, okay? So the altitude runs and is perpendicular, okay? It could be outside the triangle too. From the vertex perpendicularly, it could actually make a bigger triangle, if you will. Let's do some, oh, nope, we're going to learn more vocab first. So the median, okay, so the altitude is perpendicular, right? The median goes from a vertex down and is not perpendicular. It could be an altitude and a median, but usually it's not. And the median goes down and it creates two congruent pieces of the other side. So it goes from the vertex to the midpoint of the other side, okay? So make sure you have written down each of these, okay? Pause and write them down. So here, so here we need to find x if VD is 2x minus 3 and VB is 4 plus x. Well, the only way we'd be able to do that is if this is a perpendicular bisector. I'm sorry, not a perpendicular bisector. Whew. If it is a median, right? Because then these would be equal. This problem doesn't actually say it. I believe that the beginning instructions is that it said all of these examples are a median, okay? So we would do 2x minus 3 equals, whoops, that's a 4, plus x. And let's subtract our x. Of course, there are other ways to do this problem, right? You could have started by adding the 3, which is fine, as long as you end up here. And all it wanted was x, so we're good. Now, this one, I think, looked like it could have been perpendicular, so you might have been able to use the altitude rule, except that didn't do us any good there. This one, that's obviously not perpendicular, so we're using that median rule. So if GY is 5x minus 2 and GZ is 10x minus 11, we just set them equal to each other. Okay, and let's subtract the 5x. Why do I do the 5x? Because then I'll have a positive x, which just makes my brain happier. Plus 11, 9 equals 5x. I feel like I did something wrong because we're getting a decimal, but that's okay. And so 9 over 5 equals x, which would be a weird x, but maybe I did some math wrong, wrote something down wrong. You can tell me if you watch the video and that I was wrong. Okay, oof, WC is this big old fraction, ew. Okay, again, WC is this. EC, that's the whole thing, is this. So what that means is x plus 3 over 2 plus x plus 3 over 2, right? Once for WE and once for WC equals 2x minus 5. Or you could say that somewhere along the way I paused there, not sure where. Sorry about that. But x equals 8, and that's all we needed to figure out. Okay, I think this theorem is fun. myself. I don't know why. It's one of my favorites. It's weird that I have a favorite theorem. But it's the triangle midsegment theorem. Okay, and what it says is that this guy in the middle here, if these are parallel, and how do we know that they're parallel? Because they give us the little arrows, right? Oops, right there, right? That tells us they're parallel. Okay. If they're parallel and at the midpoint. So that would mean that those two are congruent and these two are congruent. That does not mean that these two are congruent, right? That's why this one has 1 and this one has 2. Well, now that I've scribbled all over it. Because it doesn't necessarily mean that BD and BE are equal, okay? But BD and DA are equal. That's what that means. So write down what you need to write down. This might be enough. You might need the words. Up to you. Definitely write down the picture if you write down just this. So what that means, I didn't talk about the rules, did I? I mean about the actual formula. Sorry. So now that we know what a midsegment is, this piece, the midsegment, is half of the longest side. Okay? DE, midsegment, equals half of AC, which means that this is half of that. Okay? Or you could say that 2 of these equals this. Whichever one your brain can wrap around easier. So we would say 2x minus 18 equals 2x minus 12 over 2. Or we can say that 2 times 2x minus 18 equals 2x minus 12. Same difference. Because to get rid of this 2, you would multiply both sides by 2 and you would get this, right? Because yes, this really becomes x minus 6, but a lot of us don't see that, and sometimes that won't happen. If this was a 13, you couldn't do that, okay? So for a lot of us, this way of thinking about it, twice the midsegment equals the third side, makes a little bit more sense to our brains, okay? So we would distribute. I don't have a calculator on me, so bear with me in my math. Okay, so let's do minus 2x. So 2x minus 36 equals negative 12. Add our 36. 2x equals, oops, I forgot to actually write that there, sorry. 24, and x equals 12. It didn't actually say whatever, so the original instructions probably just said find x. If it says find rs, you would just put the 12 back in, that kind of thing. You know how to do that at this point. So again, we've got our midsegment, and then we've got our third side. And if we do 2 of those, we get that. So we're going to do 2 times x plus 19 equals x plus 31. And again, I think it's just better math, because if we did x plus 19 equals x plus 31 over 2, we would just end up here anyway. So if we just start here, it's probably easier on most of us. So 2x plus 19 times 2, which is 38. Subtract that x. X plus 38 equals 31. Subtract the 38. X equals negative 7. Now, can x be negative? Yes. But if you stick it back in, the side can't be negative. So if you stick your negative 7 in there, we end up with 12, which is acceptable. If we ended up with negative 12, that would be, you did something wrong, okay? All right, I think I'm going to stop there because this is the exact same thing. Holler if you have questions.